Welcome to Being Boss, a podcast for creatives, business owners, and entrepreneurs who want to take control of their work and live life on their own terms. I'm your host, Emily Thompson, and in this episode, I'm talking with my friends Tasha Harrison and Erica Courdae about making decisions that are not in total alignment with your values. You can find all the tools, books, and links we reference on the show notes at www.beingboss.club. And if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe to the show and share us with a friend. All right, bosses, it's time to add another podcast to your queue. Let me introduce you to The Shine Online, hosted by Natasha, brought to you by the HubSpot Podcast Network, the audio destination for business professionals. Natasha recently did an episode I know so many of you will want to make a mad dash for, as it's become a common topic in the Being Boss community. It's called Why You're Burned Out on Social Media and a Solution. And if that's not your jam, Natasha's interviews and conversations about entrepreneurship, mental health, and the art of shining online will certainly have something to fit your fancy. Learn more and listen to The Shine Online wherever you get your podcasts. Erica Courdae is a trusted advisor to entrepreneurs and executive teams committed to shifting focus, power, and resources in order to create more equity in their business and the world. She's a certified coach and co-host of the Pause on the Play podcast. Tasha L. Harrison is a romance author and creator of the hashtag 20K in 5 days writing challenge and Word Makers, a writing community where authors come together to do the writing work. Both Tasha and Erica have been guests here on Being Boss a number of times in the past, both together and separately. To catch up on them and their stories, check out their previous appearances in the show notes for this episode at beingboss.club. Y'all, I hope this show is not a mess.
We say this before we record every single time.
I know.
You know that?
I know. It's going to be great. It's going to be good. Welcome. That is our cold entry into this episode. We have been sitting here already for 10 minutes just shooting the shit. And I was like, y'all, we have to do this. We have to do this and we have to have like a kind of serious conversation. Can we do that today?
I guess. If we must.
We are capable of doing such things. We can do big things.
And we can do hard things.
Yeah,
we can do hard things. Mostly I feel like I don't want to have a hard conversation today, but I'm here to do it. Let's do it. We are here to talk about making hard decisions through the lens of our values, which should be a really interesting one. I know, Erica, you do a lot of work in the space of values in your DEI coaching that you do. We do it a lot here at Being Boss. Tasha's like, what are you doing?
Tasha ain't doing nothing if it ain't values aligned. She's like, I just won't.
Indeed. She just lives it.
Factual.
It's just living it. It's just living it. So I knew I was going to have another conversation with the two of you. I got on Marco Polo and I was like, hey, what do you want to talk about? And Erica is always like going there, all the way going there. Was like, why don't we have this conversation about making hard decisions through the lens of your values? And I was like, heard, Tasha?
Do we want to do this or can we talk about something fun?
And Tasha was ready for it. So here we are having this chat. This is something that comes up. I mean, if you are in business, if you actually screw business, if you are showing up and doing things outside of your comfort zone, if you are interacting with other people or, organizations in the world, you're going to be running into situations where you have to make decisions for yourself or your business or your family or your team or et cetera, that sometimes maybe don't align fully with your values. And we wanted to come here and have a conversation as to what that looks like, because we're always talking about, make decisions through the lens of your values, be in alignment, et cetera, et cetera. But sometimes that's not 100% possible. And we're here to talk about what happens in that space. Who wants to get started? Erica, I feel like you are chomping at the bit.
I wasn't, but I can go. I mean, I think the only reason I'm not going to go with anything like specific, I'm going to do a couple hybrids of pieces because I'm not going to call any individual groups of people out.
Yep.
However, Tasha like, okay, I'll let you do that. I won't be so kind, but okay.
I'll be trying.
part of what is always this duality when I'm working with people is this place of you are being imperfect, and that is allowed. And I am not here to absolve you or to make you feel good about missteps or discoveries. And I am not here to be tokenized.
That last bit.
So there's this place of, providing support and being in spaces and being open and being accessible, and also having to have very clear boundaries around what I, as a human, as a Black woman, am not available for, and that my presence does not somehow absolve you of this. It is not a get out of jail free card. It is not a, but it's fine because I apologize, right? It's not really how that works. And so there's that space of having to work with someone one-to-one or one-to-many and really going deeper as to what imperfect allyship means. It does not mean just keep screwing it up every chance you get. It means being intentional and making amends when you do make mistakes, but not fully just going in intending like, I'm just going to put my foot right on in my whole mouth and it's fine.
I'll just apologize later.
Right. Because I have unfortunately been on that receiving end of, but wait, I'm working with the Black person. And it's like, no, that doesn't work that way. That's not how that goes. And yet you're supposed to be imperfect. You're supposed to be able to have space to figure it out. So I have to let you figure it out. And I have to have very clear boundaries and I have to enforce them regularly. And not because anybody is like regularly like determined to push, but you don't know what you don't know. And it's important for me to be able to be clear because clear is kind.
I love how you're bringing in this idea of being imperfect because I feel like that's really what we're going in here. Like we're going to dig in to talk about. Because I feel like often when we are talking about values and living in alignment and all of those things, we're kind of insinuating that this perfect alignment is what we should be going for. But in the messy reality of this messy world, not really possible. And I think if you are trying too hard to align, you're not going to do anything in your life or in your business. So I love that there is this embracing of, we're going to talk about values. We're going to understand what they are. We're going to, strive to align with them as much as possible. But we are imperfect humans in an imperfect world. And there has to be this sort of gray area that we do exist in general.
Absolutely. And the thing I have to say is, as somebody that is always a recovering perfectionist, just when I think I move forward, it's like, nope, I didn't backslid into it again. I am going to attract other people that are similar. And so more often than not, people are more afraid of getting it wrong. And so there's this place of like, I don't want that to be the thing that stops you. And you have to try. And so more often than not, I do find that the people that really make the biggest impact start off with that, like, I'm going to screw this up. I'm going to screw this up and I don't want to mess this up. The people that make me nervous are the ones that just kick down the door and I'm like, whoo, you came in hot. That's a lot. Wait a minute now. Because they didn't have any intentionality.
Right. I think a lot of that, it ties to the fact that if you are concerned about messing it up, you're already thinking ahead to consider that I may do or say something harmful or hurtful. I do not want to do that. So I want to put everything in place so that I'm not doing that, versus someone who's just like, I'm going to say it. Tell me how to fix it.
That part. That part.
Yeah.
That part. And that's where, the interesting thing is I think that so often people love to compartmentalize the work that I do. Anything that even remotely shows up with diversity, equity, and inclusion, they want it to be like, oh, it's another thing. When the reality is that every single concept that comes up, whether it's imperfection, whether it's values, whether it's company culture, like insert thing here, it shows up in everything. Your household is a company culture. Your business requires imperfection, and it requires risk taking. Like, these are not things that are mutually exclusive to this one area. So when people love to like want to extract and be like, oh, it only exists here, it's like, actually, no. This is everything that you're doing. But you have to understand that. That's where it's like, oh, now this gets a little easy because I'm recognizing that this is everything that I am thinking, saying, doing, and being. No different than when you tell people, go be boss. Emily, you ain't telling them, only be boss at work. Don't be boss nowhere else. Like, just be boss as a whole.
Yep. It reminds me of something. This is like an old bossism. Someone came on the show, or maybe it just like came out of Kathleen's mouth at some point. I don't even remember. But how you do anything is how you do everything.
Facts.
Right? Of like, no matter where it is. But I want to talk about this gray space, though. I want to talk about like, and I think probably the best way to maybe bring this into awareness for everyone of what I want to dig into and how this is actually applicable is I've asked you both to like bring a situation or a couple in which you moved forward in your life or work in a way that was not in complete alignment with your values, but you made, I'm going to call them concessions in order to make the move. And then I want to like dig into what happened. Like, how did you feel about it? How did you deal with it? How did you commute? Like all of those things. But I think let's set the stage first with a situation in which you did something that wasn't 100% in alignment. Good or bad. But like maybe good. Maybe a good thing that you did. Who wants to go first with that one? Tasha, love that hand. Go for it.
So I'm in a slightly different situation. Well, probably the mirror situation of what Erica does daily. I am dealing with, I was about to say an entity. Let's just call it an industry because I thought entity evil, but I'm dealing with
Yep.
It's October, y'all. My brain's going that way. But yeah, I work within an industry that is really not, they're only surfacely concerned with DEI. There's a lot of performative allyship that goes on. There's a lot of performative diversity that goes on. And there are lots of times in my career that I probably could have been further along than I am if I could just shut my mouth sometimes. I'm unable to.
I can't if it make you feel. I can't. Don't let nobody lie to you.
It's not my forte either.
I'm actually sure it causes cancer if you hold it in. You can't remain a well person and just hold in that, that righteous rage like that. But, there comes a point in the process of dealing with an entity that has I keep saying entity, industry that has no real desire or no motivation to change, how you choose to interact in it and without limiting your opportunities and possibilities. And I'm coming up against that now. It's just that it's difficult to make a justification for getting involved with something that is still like, notably racist and non-inclusive. But
tell me what ain't. Tell me what ain't though.
So like, and one of those values is like, for me, is like, if I'm going to be existing within this space, I'm still going to have to be me. I'm still going to be the person who writes the stories I write about, the people that I write about, the themes and concepts that I write about. But, having that, being under that umbrella kind of casts you in a negative light. And this is mostly because there are those who've gone before me who were really loud about diversity, and then they got their book deals, and now all of a sudden everything's in the DMs. They're all keeping quiet. They're not paying attention to any sort of industry stuff that they were able to take advantage of during that small window of time when they were like, oh, we'll welcome you in, now the door is closed and, they're just like, well, I got my deal. So I'm not going to be out here talking about, massa like that. Ooh. But for real.
Oops.
I mean,
yeah. Right. So you're operating in a whole industry that is problematic and in conflict with your own personal values. And I mean, we've seen you navigate this ins and outs of weird situations and community commentary and like the whole shebang. We'll come back to like why and how and all of those things in a second. But Erica, what about yours?
It makes me think about when I finally went from being employed by someone else to being fully employed on my own and really starting my salon. And I, did work for a corporate entity and did not get the support that I needed. I was the highest grossing stylist. I, of course, had all of the people that looked like me because there wasn't anyone else to do it. And I could not get the support that I needed. I wasn't able to get the products. Like I felt like I was constantly like, I need this, I need this, I need this. Because I couldn't just order my own things. Because when you're working for, like if you're in somewhere and you're not doing booth rent, like you can't just go get what you want. And I did a lot of baby, please to try to get what I needed. And there was a situation that came up and it just was really clear to me that leadership was never going to do it. And they were just going to string me along as possible. And it didn't matter to me if it was direct leadership or if it was corporate leadership that was doing it. I just finally hit a point and like a switch just flipped and I was like, I'm done. Mm-hmm. And I began to plan everything that I needed to do to leave. And that meant that I had to covertly, find my clients and let them know like, hey, I'm gonna leave. Just so you know, hey girl, hey, you want to come? I'm leaving. Because what they needed was not going to happen there. And I was more focused on my clients receiving what they needed than to leave them and to not be able to support them or to just leave because I just don't want to deal with this, because I felt like the structure was inherently flawed. And I had to figure out how is it that, I can go do what I need to do that's actually in service to the people that I actually do. I'm in the beauty industry because I enjoy people. I'm here to be of service to them in this way. And it's like, well, this is what's happening. Because they were like, you gonna stay here? Because they just were like, I don't know what's happening. You gonna stay here, girl? No. Oh, where you going? I'm going with you. And it was never this like, I think in the beauty industry, there's this idea of like, poaching and like, oh, you're taking you don't own people. People go where they want to.
And they can make their own decisions.
People spend their money in the ways that they choose to. And so people chose differently. Mm-hmm. And I had to make a choice to completely go out of the comfort zone of, and I'm going to say it's the lie, the quote unquote lie of, oh, you have, consistent work and you have benefits and you have this and you have that. And I'm like, yes, and this does not work. And so I completely left. And that from that point on, like I 100% worked for myself. Mm-hmm. And that was that risk taking of I'm going to jump. And I feel confident that I am going to be caught and supported well. But I know that that's not always an easy thing for people to go and do. Because
or even visualize.
No, especially when you're told that working for somebody else is more consistent or more reliable. Exactly. And that's not necessarily true. It's often not true. You can lose your job at any time. Yep. You can get furloughed at any time. That doesn't mean anything. And so I was just like, it is not in my values to stay here and to do something that doesn't feel good. And I'm not going to just, hit the Dave Chappelle, I quit, and just walk out the day. I wasn't going to do that either. Because I'm like, no. I wanted to make sure that I had planned and decided what I needed to do for me and what was going to be best for the people who, you know, I had relationships with. Like, these are people, you watch them get married, you watch them have kids, you're a part of their, you know, their lives. They mattered.
Right.
And so I dealt with this very questionable situation at that point, because it was a little transient with some of the hiring and things. And took the risk of, I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's not this. It's not this. And so part of it was I was still building it. I was like,
no. It was like a situation where I was just throwing down the tracks as the train was coming.
I knew that I was.
I'm throwing the tracks down in front of it. Like,
I'm not. Exactly. It's like, I'm not going to just stand still. And I don't know what direction this is going. I have no idea what's happening. I'll figure it out.
When was the last time you said it's almost too easy when talking about a piece of tech? Probably never, right? Because tech usually isn't easy. Tech is often too complicated, too busy, and too frustrating, especially for us creative types, when it should be just plain easy. HubSpot CRM platform is ridiculously easy to learn, use, and love. That's because it's a handcrafted, sophisticated system designed for the way teams actually work, not a bunch of cobbled together tools that don't actually speak to each other. With a suite of powerful tools that seamlessly connect your teams and customizable hubs that you can add or subtract as you grow, it's not almost too easy to use, it is easy to use, period. Learn how HubSpot can help your business grow better at HubSpot.com. But what I'm going to poke you, Erica, because what you just shared was a time in which you did follow your values. But I do recognize that I think being in that industry is against your values in a way. And I also know for you that like safety and security piece of that is so important to you that I feel like that really was that nugget of it for you.
That was the thing, because I still did not have the awareness at that point of that programming of like, what do you mean you're going to work for yourself and do what? What do you don't go and work somewhere else for somebody else? Well, how do you get paid? And so it was,
where's money coming from?
Right. Just like that whole like, oh, so you're at home. No, I'm working. Oh, you're home. No, I'm working. I just happen to be in the house. I'm working though. And so, but at that point, I didn't have the conscious awareness of it. And I was still absolutely fighting that whole piece of like, what happens when I don't have health insurance paid for? What happens when I am no longer, employed by somebody else and I have to buy all the products and all the overhead is on me? And so there was a lot of fear, and it was scary.
What's that little hand for, Tasha?
I know. I'm like, what is it?
I do have a question for Erica, and it's framed in, your work as a DEI consultant. How often do you come up against clients that want to work with you, but you refuse to work with them for XYZ reasons? And how do you make those decisions? You know what I mean?
Yes.
Because I know that there's some trash people in your inbox. It's just impossible for it not to be a thing, considering the type of work you do. So,
right. I got the most 2020 and 2021. Mm-hmm. So I don't get as many now. I think I have been really kind of outspoken and transparent about my values and who's a good fit and who's not a good fit, and how I work with people pretty often. So I try to repel the ones that are not a good fit purposefully. Honestly, there's only a handful, and I'm not really giving anything away to say this. Honestly, the things that are like that you read and you're just like, who the hell is this? Where did you come from? They're podcast pitches.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, girl, those are can we not go down that road literally at all? Those are.
You're like, have you listened to this
worst.
podcast? Why do you think you want to be on here?
But that's the whole thing.
Yeah.
People that are not clear on what the show is, they don't understand your values. They make assumptions about your audience.
You're literally already giving them too much credit. They're not thinking that much. They're just sending emails to an email on a list.
Absolutely.
They are. But that's why for me, I'm like, oh no. And I mean, the good thing is it's easy to tell when it's not a good fit. But I don't have to feel those as often. The only thing I think that I maybe have every blue moon is the person that has their own fear or apprehension, and it possibly shows up in the form of urgency. But once I actually, end up interacting.
Yes, trash light.
I know.
Yeah.
Well, but you know how like somebody does something and you're like, oh, okay, I understand now. That really wasn't what I thought it was.
Yeah.
That didn't make it okay. And I get it. Like, okay. It doesn't happen too often. It doesn't happen too often.
That's surprising, but nice.
The real trash doesn't make it that far.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, and it's mostly because of your messaging. You're aligning your business framework with your values. So that makes.
Oh, and I use the word no.
Oh,
so like
we know.
There are people that will not say no.
Yeah.
And that in itself is a problem. Like if it does not feel right, if my intuition or my gut is like, I listen and I pay attention. I have learned physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually what happens when I do not listen to my intuition. We are good friends. I take the information. So it doesn't happen too often. And anytime that I feel like maybe a person could benefit from something, that is the benefit of having almost 200 episodes of a podcast.
There you go.
I'm sure there's an episode I can direct you to go get your life
here.
Right. Okay.
Just,
My story time. You ready for this?
Yeah.
Yes.
This little moment. And I haven't talked about this super publicly. I think Tasha, you in particular probably know about this one. I feel like in this moment, I'm hiding this in 300 plus episodes. If someone finds it one day, so be it. So be it. Recording the audiobook for the Being Boss book. It's a little one, but still irks me so hardcore. The story is, whenever we were negotiating our contract for the Being Boss book, we wanted to negotiate in that Kathleen and I would be able to do the audiobook, and the answer was no. That they would find someone to do it, and that we would not be allowed to. And as we were negotiating, several parts of this negotiation process was very against my personal and business values. And really even some of the messaging that we show up here and talk about it being boss, but I know, right? I love that we're both talking about the same industry here. Publishing is awful, everybody. So we wanted to negotiate in that we could. They said no, that they would hire someone to do it. And we were like, okay. We were told that we needed to just let that one go. So we did, and we moved along. And then they did come to us and want us to do the audiobook for the book. And we were so excited to do it. And when we brought up getting paid to do such a thing, we were told, no, we should just consider ourselves lucky that we get to.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
So this is the tricky thing about doing audiobooks yourself. The way that publishing works, if you contribute any sort of service-based thing that they would normally pay for, instead of paying you for it, they just oh, that's great. You did it yourself. Amazing.
Yeah. They coordinated sound booths and stuff. We didn't do it on our mics, and we had a producer, we had somebody in our ear talking us through it, the whole thing. But we were told we could not even ask to be paid for this additional service that we were provided in the 6, 7, 8 days between us that it took us to do it. And Kathleen even split the script herself, because they did not even send us a split script for the book. They just delivered us the book between two people and told us to deliver it. And again, like that for like talking about it, I'm like shaking on my inside. I'm so angry about it. And it's funny. I feel like even what you're talking about, Erica, is almost like this split value situation where you have to choose between two of your values, right? And for me, it was to choose to show up for this work of creativity. Creativity is one of my values. I want to be here and create. I enjoy seeing other people's creativity, like many layers of it. Creativity is one of my values. I showed up for that one, but at the, demise of, what's the word I'm looking for? At the
kind of at the cost of.
Yeah, at the cost of this message that we had been preaching, we continue to preach of like, don't do shit for free.
How you gonna tell me I can't even ask?
Can't even ask.
Listen.
Could not even ask.
And I don't want to make this whole episode about me, but no, truly though, because I've negotiated audiobook deals for my self-published books, and I make all of my covers. And under normal circumstances, that would be something that this company would pay to do. But because I do it myself, they're just like, oh, if you have them, send them over. I'm like, is there any compensation? I was like, oh no, we don't have any compensation for that.
You need to have a designer alter ego. You know, it was very expensive.
Very.
I hate anybody that shows up with that idea of like pay for exposure bullshit lie. That, just be glad.
It's you should be lucky. Like, right? You should feel lucky that you get the opportunity to do this.
You're reaching a new readership and a new demographic that you never would have been able to touch on your own. So you should be thankful. You should be grateful.
Yeah, you should
for
be
this
grateful.
Opportunity.
Yeah. So anyway, that's mine, and it's one that in terms of the creativity, I love what happened. The book is great, all these things, but it was absolutely in conflict with the general messaging that was behind the entire project. And still just irks me to this day.
I mean, the idea that they thought you could even have someone else do y'all's narration when you have a literal podcast.
Right.
Everyone who knows you and listens to the podcast will be like, who is this lady reading this book?
You didn't write this book, goodbye.
Right?
Oh, this.
We don't know. Where's Emily?
Well, and it's interesting because there is that duality. There's that place of like, I want to do this because of the, the love of the craft, the art, the service, the contribution, the impact. And I want to be respected. I want to be compensated fairly. I want to be comfortable and safe in the environment that I'm doing this in. And that's on all levels, not just physical, but like mental and emotional of like, I mean, I can't even talk in here because y'all going to take what I say and, I got to stay in this little box. And so that place of, how dedicated are you to the artist piece of it? Mm-hmm. That piece that as creatives we have and we need to feed in some way, shape, or form. And yet the real literal piece of business has some real tangible pieces of like there's numbers, there's dollars, there's parameters, there's rules, there's ways that things work, whether we like it or not. And so we're already working in a system that's broken. And so you get this really crappy feeling of, I can't dismantle the master's house with the master's tools, but here I am.
Mm-hmm. And also, like, that's literally what I'm coming up against. Like, at some point, you have to consider the fact, or I'm considering the fact, that I'm not, like, there's this whole concept of selling out. You know what I mean? Like, I've stuck to all of my values and my ethics, my personal values and ethics, and the same ones that I preach to every author that I work with. And now I'm getting an opportunity to do something different. And the hopes are that my experience will not align with, the crappy experiences that came before me. However, at some point I have to say, okay, all of my catalog does not have to be this thing. As long as I try to remain myself as much as possible, am I selling myself out or am I selling myself short by not taking advantage of it?
I've been thinking about this for you, but also something for me too, of this idea of selling out. I think there's or selling yourself short. I think there's a third option that no one thinks about, and that's selling yourself up. That I just want to throw in there. I made it up.
I want to hear, and then I have a thought too. But
I mean, it's kind of like failing up, I guess. Like,
Yeah. Or just like sometimes you have to make, well, I don't want to say deals with the devil because that's intense. I don't mean that. But I think that there are times where carefully considered and intentional decisions to partner and or collaborate with people for what you hope is a greater good. It's like, people who plan wars. This is a touchy subject, but killing 1,000 to save a couple million sort of scenario. Again, that's sort of dark and a little deeper than I mean it to go.
It's like the whole analogy of the 4 people on the train tracks. Like you can kill them or kill like a whole group of kindergartners. There's 5 adults tied to the track. You have
my gosh.
I mean, but this
got
is
real gross.
I mean, well, yeah. I mean, this is the real, like a real literal. I don't know. Maybe I've just been in too many leadership fucking classes. We'll circle back around to that. But like, there's this whole idea. It was like, okay, you can save these 3 people who are tied to the tracks by pulling this lever, but when you pull the lever, you're going to kill all this potential over here, like all of these kindergartners, these kids. So it's like, you know what I mean? Like, what choice do you make? It was like, well, can you stop the train? No, the train is going to go. So what decision do you make? And it's I feel like at a certain point, not that you have to abandon your values, but you have to, what is the word? Tweak, adjust, massage.
So this goes into the thought that I have around entrepreneurship. And there's this place of, I have had people use the word activist for me, and I'm like, I feel very uncomfortable with that because in my head, activist means that you are literally
a doer. It's your doing,
boots on the ground. Yeah. You are like that. I'm like, no, I'm not necessarily there, in that particular way, and it makes me think about the concept of entrepreneurship because if you are out as the activist, you are doing the outward stuff. The entrepreneur is still doing the work, but this is the person that like, I work inside of this entity and I have my values in place and I understand why I'm here. And I am going to, on the surface, be able to stay here because I seem as though I'm good, but I am making changes from the inside. Because I have made myself, quote unquote, easy and or palatable enough for you to be willing to listen to what I have to say if I'm a part of the conversation and to actually make changes. Because there are so many people that are always wanting to burn it down, but there is a place to where there is some change that has to happen from within side. And so I am always that believer in top down and bottom up. A lot of people are like, you have to make it on a policy level. A lot of people are like, no, it's all grassroots. I think you need both. And I think that meeting in the middle does include people that are within organizations. And I can use government as an example. Somebody that is like, I am going to work to change legislation. I am going to work to shift where money's going. And
I don't know about that. I don't know about that comparison because I feel like government is like the one absolute entity where top down never happens. Never.
Government is a whole nother issue. Yeah. I only give that one because
it's a concept that people understand.
Correct. That's a whole nother set of.
Yeah. I mean, like, I get what you're saying. Like with like corporations, like if you can get someone in the top level of things to, sign on for your cause, y'all can meet in the middle.
Because essentially if we all yell loud enough and they push us all out and they just put a whole bunch of, mediocre white men that really aren't good at their jobs and are damn sure not concerned about anybody in places and positions of power and influence, do we win? No.
We don't win, but they do. And that's all they care about is winning. So this is where I don't necessarily believe that these large systems can be changed. I'm not as hopeful as Erica.
I'm not fully hopeful in it.
Yeah.
So let me be clear. I'm not.
I think that there's something to be said for groups of us going in and getting what we can get out of it. Mm-hmm. And pulling that experience, that knowledge and know-how and taking it somewhere else and giving it to other people. That's something different than, getting in and just like, becoming Mr. Anderson and just folding into, what I'm saying? Like the Matrix, like you just become.
True. But it all requires you to have spent some time in there, even though you didn't want to be. Yeah. So the Matrix is a great example. They didn't want to be in the Matrix, but at certain points, did they have to go in and appear as if they blended in to get what they needed to extract people?
True.
Oh my God.
Fiction.
I know. You just went to the Matrix.
I mean,
so it's like,
it's just like that. It's like you have
it is.
You have a decision to make. It's like if you're going to go into this entity, are you going to become Mr. Anderson? Or are you going to be Neo pretending to be somebody else?
I also love that we are now talking corporations.
I mean, are we not? I mean, right? I just feel like there's at some point all of us have to deal with an industry outside of ourselves. You know what I mean?
There's always something, and at the end of the day, I don't think that they can all be saved. But I also know that to tear them all down without anything to replace them with will just create anarchy if you do everything at one time. Like that sounds like a great idea till it don't. And I'm not saying that because I am trying to save anything. But I do think that there is a point of like, what do I need to get or know or do in this space for XYZ amount of time before I need to go and do something else? And I say that as having had clients that were in positions of, if I go, they're going to replace me with a yes person. Mm-hmm. So if I stay and I can find places to make change, or I then have information that I can go put somewhere else and create change, I'm better suited to stay than to leave.
Is anyone else eyeballs deep in the return of travel, conferences, retreats, meetups, which means receipts? I'll be honest, I'd gotten used to not having my wallet overflowing with wads of flimsy paper that I just had to save. Luckily, that's not how we have to live anymore. Not me or you, thanks to FreshBooks Cloud Accounting. In fact, organizing your expenses has never been easier. Take photos of receipts with your phone using the FreshBooks mobile app and then throw the receipt away. You can even do one better by applying receipts directly to clients or invoices when you need. Travel lighter and still do your job. What more can a boss ask for? Try FreshBooks free for 30 days, no credit card required. Go to freshbooks.com/beingboss to get started today. What I love about this is that we're illustrating where I was hoping we were going to go with this, where there is this like weighing of values and understanding your impact in whatever space you're considering going. And let's say it is, you know, a collaboration with someone that like, or like partnering with an organization or going into an organization or whatever it may be. There's a weighing of values that has to happen. There is this like intentional move into that space of going, I recognize that I am, you know, not in complete alignment with my values in this situation. And I'm still making the move in because 3, there is an impact to be made that I can only make if I am in that space. And I do feel like if you are making this decision to, you know, step back from your values in this way, you're moving towards a greater good that makes me feel better about making decisions in that way than I would otherwise. But I also love here that we are talking about this incredible intentionality and like awareness around the situation. We're not just skipping into these places going, I'm going to do this until it's hard. And then as soon as it's hard, I'm going to leave. It's going and going, I'm not skipping in, I'm stomping in a little bit. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Walk up in here, hold my values in place once I'm in this space, to make the impact that I need to make, and then also leaving when needed. I haven't written another book, everybody. I have not ventured back into that space at all.
Because it's hell.
Yeah.
And I think that too, like, if you're going to take this on like more of a personal level, as small business owners, like almost every season you have to make a decision. It's like, okay, I've been invited to this thing. Do I want to be on a panel with these people? No matter how much exposure it gives you, like, you have to make a decision. It's like, do I want to be the loudmouth in this room? Because is this the right room to be the loudmouth in? Number one, am I going to be outnumbered in such a way that it's going to impact me negatively, like mentally and physically, or impact my business in a way that's negative? Like, those small decisions, those seem easy to me. Like, it's like, oh, would you like to come to? Absolutely not. I'm not going to be in the same room with these authors. You must be out of your rabbit ass mind. No.
Well, but see, what you mentioned as well is that understanding that you need all of the above. So if we think about nature, you have the sun, you have the moon, you have high tide, you got low tide. You need all of those things. And so the same way you need somebody that's like, you out your rabbit ass mind, I'm not coming in here. You're going to have that person that's like, I'm not going to say nothing, and I'm going to watch, and then I'm going to take this information back, and I'm going to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
Those are two very different, ends of the spectrum. But you need all of the above. Because you do need the people that are like, oh no, I'm gonna be real outspoken and that's fine. You're gonna have the ones that are like, I'm gonna observe and get the necessary information or get the contacts or whatever needs to do. And you in there on the Mission Impossible. Look what I need you. You are in there on your covert mission.
I mean, but for real, I do think that like, there was a time that I was that loudmouth in the room and I enjoyed it. But like, looking back, it's like 10 years, 11 years in, I'm like, girl, you could have been somewhere else if you just shut up.
But you can still be the loudmouth in the room without being the loudmouth in the room. Like, you're already talking. I know this thing that you're talking about but not talking about, and you've already talked about being the loudmouth in the room.
And also not pulling up the ladder behind me, because that feels very intentional, because there are so many people who come in and they'll be like, well, I got this, so I'm not going to worry about nobody else. I'm going to exist in that space with my big ass mouth and, be like, oh, but also my girl over here, she needs some love.
But that's the whole thing. The loudest person in the room isn't necessarily the loudest mouth in the room.
Yeah. For sure. And I think I can think of a couple situations, especially recently, where the same thing true for me, where like been in a space with people where like, if I wasn't thinking dynamically or deeply about these situations, it probably would have been a fast and quick no. Yeah. Right. But when you think dynamically and deeply about situations, and like, there's also a recognizing of your power that comes in this too, of like knowing that you have the power to go into a room and like change the perspective, or like allow for some disillusionment or whatever it may be, right?
It's like,
simply
I'm not
by being present.
Yeah, just like to come in knowing that they're trying to sell you a dream and you're not going to buy into it.
Yeah.
And stay in that mode, like to always keep them on their toes. You know what I mean? Like, it's one thing to be invited into a space like that. It's something else to go into it intentionally and be like, oh, okay, yeah, you want me here, but I'm not going to make it comfortable for you.
Yeah.
Whoever you thought stay aware.
Yeah. Whoever you thought I was coming in here, that's who I am now that I'm in here. You're not going to shut me down or shut me up.
Yeah.
No, because some people go into spaces and then they do the Mr. Anderson. They just kind of absorb and become, and they acclimate. That's a big difference from the program did not change.
Yeah.
Especially when it doesn't really, like, if it's just a money situation, you can make money.
Right.
If money is the determination, you can make money. If you could do that on your own. But if it's a situation where you could absolutely change how people are viewing this particular part of the industry or make way for other people to take advantage of this part of the industry, then that seems more worthy to me.
Yeah.
Like, we're all really adept at making our own tables. That is like, I'm like Barb the Builder.
Tis the boss way.
Barb the Builder over here. I'm just building my own table. I got to build my own bookshelf. I got to build the whole thing. And then they looked over here and said, ooh, you got something good going on. You want to share with us? You know?
You got a cute table.
Can I see your table?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. And so I do think that whenever you choose the path of being boss, but really like being a leader and a small business owner, like even if it's a solopreneur situation, just by claiming that role for yourself, you give yourself a different kind of power to initiate change and or make an impact or whatever. And I find that it's usually in those situations where values get brought up, and sometimes you got to bend them just a little bit in order to make it into the rooms, in order to, you know, make the moves, gain the resources. That one's a little stickier, gaining the resources. Depends on what the resources are, I think, and what you want to use them for. But I think there is a careful dance that has to be played. But I think we can all agree that it's holding the best of intentions and this idea of elevated impact in mind in order to do it.
There, 100%. There are absolutely conferences, as an example, that I, on the surface, would be like,
yeah, that's a good one.
But if somebody were to show up and be like, hey, we want you to speak. Okay. So now I have an opportunity to leverage this. I have an opportunity to get what I want and what I need. And I also have an opportunity to draw attention to the fact that if there's a lack of diversity, if there's a lack of representation, if there's a lack of honoring the people that you're having come here and compensating them fairly, whatever that thing happens to be.
Yeah.
I am not going to I am likely not. There are some things I'm just like, nah, my spirit can't carry this. But I am likely not going to say no if there is an opportunity for me to make impact.
Yeah.
I am willing to move into this space that is questionable at best to prove a point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But that's the nugget, everybody. We found the nugget. Right there. Good. I completely agree with that. And I think it definitely is in situations like that too, because oftentimes we'll talk about, you know, values is what keeps you feeling good about your decisions. And though I did illustrate how that book decision still makes you want to barf sometimes when I think about it, it really is that like that elevated impact. Like I wouldn't have let anybody else do that audiobook, y'all. Absolutely not.
Yeah, it's like you had to make a decision about whether you were going to hold to your creative idea or demand money.
Yeah.
Well, but it's because of the fact that we make decisions and choices all the time. It's whether or not you give yourself the credit for making intentional decisions. And understanding that sometimes even when you think they weren't intentional, that those ones that you thought were just quick decisions just to get it off, no, you did it because you really that was an easy one. There are definitely times you're like, ooh, I didn't think about that, but I guess it did do that thing because people will reflect things back to you. And it's like, okay, well, here we are.
Yeah. Right. It is the intention and the impact. It's like, as long as you're going into it with like fully self-aware and with the best intentions, and then add that to you're doing this because you see the path to elevated impact, then it's okay to bend your values for this thing to get you into that space. But I also want to bring it, you know, to even you, Erica, this idea of leaving this situation that you were in, of like, there's also can be a time when you should be done. And that like, if you see the impact is not being made, if it is, you know, wearing on you too bad, whatever it may be, I feel like there's plenty of like hard situations where you have to make the call of like, okay, I did it. It's time to leave, whether the elevated impact was reached or not.
What I didn't realize when I left from being a teacher in the beauty industry was that I loved what I did, hated the leadership where I worked. They were god awful. They were terrible. I mean, like I was sick to my stomach every morning to go to work. It was horrible. And that has carried me through everything that I do to really be aware of the intentionality. I didn't even know that that was a huge part of allowing people and holding the space for them to show up as they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that person that wanted to shut me down because I laughed too loud. Like I got shushed as a whole adult. I was like,
oh, see, no, we would have been fighting that day.
Right. Right. And so
a laugh. You're gonna tell someone that's not to laugh. You don't like joy. What's wrong with you?
Oh yeah, I got the I got fully shushed.
I think I'd laugh harder.
I got
shushed. I would have cackled a little bit louder after that.
Right. And I have carried those things to shape what I have done in the beauty industry, what they do with DEI work. And so I, and that was the job that I had before I went to the one where I then went to work for myself. Mm-hmm. So it was also all pieces that led up to it. And even though at that point I was so deep in having to just work and the trying to exist, let alone thrive, I didn't know the intentionality was my friend. And it was. Because in retrospect, I can point out exactly where it was. Then I was just like, I can't stay here because I'm going to have an ulcer. I have to go. I can't live like this.
A criminal record?
Or something about to happen and it's not going to work out well. It's not going to work out well. And so I think there's this place too of sometimes having to really give yourself a little more credit for where you are. If you really have been working on it, there are points that you're like, have I done enough? Am I aware enough? Am I good enough? And then if you really pay attention, it's like there's been more happening than you've realized. And it ran deeper than you realized.
Yes. Tasha, I love this little hand. I've never seen you so, what's the word?
I don't know. I've been doing a lot of Zooms.
Good little manners over here. Yes, Tasha, you next.
Can we acknowledge also and give ourselves grace for the fact that sometimes being a loudmouth in the room is exhausting, and there is nothing wrong with just being tired of doing the thing.
As a Black woman that had spent how much time telling people that racism is bad?
I'm 44 years old. I don't want to be talking about when it comes to publishing, I literally do not want to talk about diversity and inclusion anymore. Don't ask me on your podcast to talk about that. Don't ask me to come to your conference to talk about that. I do lots of other things. I am a smart person. Please talk to me about something else. And I know that because I'm such a loudmouth, like people expect that from me. Like I'm gonna you're gonna want to talk. I'm like, absolutely not. I'm done with this conversation. Like I don't want to talk to people who don't learn anything.
Don't pigeonhole someone and make them a one-trick pony. And it's not okay to assume that is the only thing that, I am in the DEI space and I have a whole lot more to bring.
I have so much I can talk about. Please ask me anything else. And there's just a point where I feel like, okay, I'm just tired. Everybody else here going out here making money doing shady shit. Why can't I do it? I would never do it. But sometimes I
want to white down.
But I was everybody else doing it. Why can't I do it?
We do have that conversation often of why are we doing this the hard way?
The scammers are winning. The scammers are winning.
That's too out of alignment with our values. We've all decided that we would not be happy. We would be very annoyed with ourselves. And it's just tiresome.
Yeah.
It's just tiresome. Perfect. Well, ladies, this has been a really good chat. I'm so glad that we could have this one together. I feel like shared some really good experiences in both. Mostly, I think everyone should just understand that the beauty and publishing industries are trash.
Y'all, I need y'all to do better.
Well, you know what?
Trash.
I don't know. These are systemic systems set up to keep us oppressed. There's absolutely no way.
They're working as they're designed.
Thank you.
They are working.
They're working as designed. We have little moments.
They are fucked up.
We have little moments where we make some progress, but they are working as designed.
But that's exactly why you have to really question, why do you want a seat at a table that you're already not welcome at? Go build your own.
Yeah.
It is really important to not...
Are you telling me to start a publishing company?
I mean, girl, do whatever you like it. I love it.
Is that what you're telling me?
I'm just saying.
No, I'm busy.
I had people years ago that was like, can you start a beauty school? Can you do this? Can you do that? I mean, if anybody feel like they want to invest, like I am happy to consult and get this going, because I'm going to tell you what, I got a whole lot to say after 25 years in the industry. And the reason I'm here is because I do care. And y'all do better. Do better.
Okay, let's wrap this up, y'all. We're wrapping it up. Tasha, where can people find more about you?
TashaLHarrison.com and at TashaLHarrison on Twitter and Instagram.
Indeed. Erica, what about you?
pauseontheplay.com and Pause on the Play on LinkedIn and on Instagram. Listen to the podcast. You can find that on our website as well.
Awesome. You can find all these links on our show notes at beingboss.club as well. Erica, what makes you feel most boss? Oh, girl, say it.
I ain't gonna say it yet. I ain't gonna say it yet.
Okay,
I ain't gonna say it. No. What I'm gonna say is there are things that little 5-year-old me didn't necessarily think was gonna happen the way that they did. And I am over the moon, overjoyed at how proud I have made my younger self. Y'all, I'm about to cry. Stop.
Oh, that's sweet. 5-year-old self, and also I think this version of yourself as well, I dare say.
Oh my gosh. And my kids. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Good job.
Y'all.
Good job. Well, no details yet, everybody, but good job. Good job. Tasha, what about you? What makes you feel most boss?
I don't know, actually, today. I don't feel very bad.
Can we say, though, to be able to just acknowledge that it's boss?
That today I don't have to feel boss.
I don't have to feel boss every day. Like, I had the most Monday of Mondays, and I'm making up for it today. So what makes me feel most boss is acknowledging that I work for myself, and I don't have to be feeling 100% every day in order to get the work done.
No, you didn't have to go work to see anybody's face today.
Oh, child, if I had to talk to somebody, it would have been a problem.
Murder.
Perfect.
Emily.
Thank you. Oh, me. What makes you feel most boss? Oh, man, I feel kind of like Tasha does today. A little
Can I
bit.
give you what I think it might be right now?
Sure.
You hate the weather, but the hats.
Oh, you know what makes me feel most boss is I have a really great hat collection, everyone. It is officially hat weather.
Emily, and when Emily bring out the hats, it is the hats and the brows, y'all.
It's a whole look.
It's a mood.
A whole look, a whole mood.
It is a whole thing.
You're ridiculous. Indeed. Hats. My hat collection, but also this hat today is making me feel boss. Thank you for that, Erica. I appreciate it. All right, thanks, you too. This was fun.
Anytime. Love being here.
Love y'all.
All right, boss, because you're here, I know you want to be a better creative business owner, which means I've got something for you. Each week, the team at Being Boss is scouring the news, the best entrepreneurial publications, and updates and releases of the apps and tools that run our businesses, and is curating it all into a weekly email that delivers the must-know tips and tactics in the realms of mindset, money, and productivity. This email is called Brewed. We brew it up for you each week to give you the insight you need to make decisions and move forward in your creative business. Check it out now and sign up for yourself at beingboss.club/brewed. That's beingboss.club/BREWED. Now, until next time, do the work, be boss.
Yeah.